How's it going? This is another episode from PM Vapes, the Vape Tank Vape Podcast. One of those little videos that this one will probably be a shorter video, so I'm not really going to say click away and you can do it stuff on other tabs, but you can go ahead and do that because this will probably be around 5 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more. So I've been doing a lot of thinking recently. Kind of thinking that my microphone stands a little bit too high right now. But I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and a lot of stuff's come to mind with vaping. And one thing I guess it's been on my mind a lot is because I've been working with mechanical mods lately, is safety. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit, and as it should. But you go and you buy vape gear, batteries, whether it be, regular Ego style batteries, batteries for mods and stuff, your 18650s, your 18350s. Take a sip of water here. And when you go buy these batteries, a lot of times, and depending on where you're buying it from too, you'll get retailers selling in brick and mortar type stores and online selling clone devices. And one thing that kind of concerns me especially on batteries for the tanks not so much, RDAs not so much, but the one thing I kind of want to know what I'm getting, and I want to know that what's advertised is going to be accurate is on a battery. And it kind of upset me the other day when the shop that I've been going to, I find out that they have some RDAs, but they have they're clones, but they have them labeled as clones. They have a couple of mods that are labeled as clones, and it's great. I'm glad that they put that out there. But then they're selling batteries, Ego style batteries, that aren't labeled as clones, and when I look at a battery, I want to know, like I said, I want to know who makes the battery. I want to know what the specs are on that battery, and I want to be able to have a company I can go to get that information. And when it's made by a company making clones, that information's not always accurate, and it's not always there because who is making that clone? Obviously, I'm sure somewhere along their supply line they could tell you, but does that supplier even? Would I be able to get that information from the supplier? Do I know what the amp limit is on the switch that's in there? Do I know that the voltage that I'm putting out, do I know that it's accurate? Do I know that it's not going to short on me? Where is this put together? Whereas, a company with a brand, they're going to put more care into their product, and they're going to make sure, because when a clone fails and people don't know it's a clone, they're not going to blame the clone manufacturer because they don't know who it is. They're going to blame whoever's making that product. So, when you have a battery fail, and it says Sony, but it's not a Sony battery. It's someone making a fake Sony battery. It's an AW battery. It's an eFest battery. And it fails. They're not going to go, they're just going to say, well, it says eFest on it. It must be an eFest battery. They must make crap. I'm not saying that they make crap, but basically what I'm saying is that when you buy a battery and it's an unknown source and you don't know what you're getting. So when it fails, yeah, the company that made that, whose name's on it, even if they're not the ones that made it, they're the ones that are going to get blamed for this. So, that leads to problems. But getting more on topic of safety and everything, that kind of just struck a nerve with me with the battery issue. But another thing, kind of, I guess, going from that into the next step is, with that information and knowing who you're getting your battery cells from, you're more able to, especially when you get into rebuildables, building your own coils and all this stuff. You need to know what the limit of your battery is. You need to know whether that battery that you're getting is a 10 amp limit, or it's a 20 amp or 25, 30, or whether it's way less than that. I got a battery, and it was the wrong battery shipped, but this is why it pays to read the specs, check your battery, double check your battery if you're ordering it from somebody. Make sure that you got the battery. that you thought that you were supposed to get. Sorry, I kind of heard a noise in the background. Wasn't sure what it was. It's the dryer, or washing machine, or something. Um, but always know how to look up the specs and figure out the specs of your battery. There's a lot of good calculators and stuff online that you can use to figure out the amp limit on the battery. And with knowing that, if you know that your battery can handle 10 amps, don't put a 9.89 or 9.9 ohm coil in there. Or not 9.9 ohm coil. Don't put a coil setup that's going to be drawing 9.9 ohms. You know, you want to give yourself some work room in there. What's a safe work room? I don't know. I can't tell you what a safe work room is. Just, you don't want to be exceeding that amp limit or right on that amp limit. You know, give yourself some space in there. You know, that's all I can say to that. You have to figure out what's safe, but just know that when you figure out your battery's amp limit, or you're going by the manufacturer's amp limit in the tech specs, don't go over that limit. You know, just don't. They put that there for a reason. If it seems really low, well, then it's probably not the right cell for your application. Get a different battery. You don't want to become a statistic, and you don't want to give people that are pushing the anti-vaping, you know, stuff. We don't need to toss more ammo to them. You know, keep things safe, keep things, you know, working properly. When cells get damaged, discard them. Bring them to the recycling place for batteries. A lot of your electronic stores have a bin, especially some of your bigger stores like Best Buy. Your Home Depots and stuff like that, they all have battery, you know, recycling type bins that you can, you know, dispose of your batteries and stuff there, so they get disposed of properly. And, you know, get new cells whenever they get damaged or worn, or they have any signs of problems. If they're swelling, if they're getting really hot, if they're not performing properly, get new batteries. You know, it's not, you know, batteries are cheap, $10 for a battery. You know, it's a lot better than having some kind of issue with the battery and that causing either harm to yourself or harm to a mod that you have it in. Mods are more expensive than batteries. Throw the battery out. Trying to think of if there's anything else with the safety aspects in here. Invest in a good ohm checker. You can either buy the little small $10 ones or $20 ones, or whatever they cost, depending on where you get them from, that you just screw the atomizer head in, and it'll give you ohms reading. You can go that route. You can also just get yourself a digital multimeter if you already have one. If you don't already have one, pick one up. You know, I like that route, mainly because that's what I have, so that's what I'm going to use. Yawning like crazy over here. But, you know, you can use that. You can check your coils, check the hook it to the leads on the coming from the coil, see what your ohms is. You know, you can actually put it on your connection on your atomizer. You know, you can just clip onto those connections, and you can read what your ohms is going to be. And me personally, I would think I actually have a good quality digital multimeter, so I really think that my ohms reading on that is gonna be way more accurate than, you know, these other ones. But those will get you in the ballpark of where you need to be. But you know, the one I have, I'm pretty sure I'm probably getting more accurate numbers from my meter, but it already had it, you know. But you need to have something. Also, and then this may even be an argument to get a little multimeter if you don't already have one, is for checking your voltage on your batteries if you're running in a mechanical, so you're not draining your batteries. Obviously, if you have a kick or you have something in there that'll have low battery voltage cutoff in it to where it'll stop running when it hits a certain voltage, then, you know. But you should probably still carry a meter around just so you can check. If something's not working right, you can check your battery voltage, make sure it's, you know, see what voltage it's putting out, see if it's put out too high voltage, too low, you know, make sure something's not happening there. if you're using a battery in a new mod that you just put together with a new coil and you're trying a new setup, after you know, vape on it for a little bit, take the battery out, make sure it's not getting hot. Usually you should be able to feel it through the mod, but take the battery out after a little while, check it, and make sure it's not overheating, make sure it's not doing anything kind of crazy. Because obviously if it's starting to have some issues after a couple vapes on it, you might be pushing it a little too far. Build a higher resistance coil so you're pulling less current off that battery. So, like I've been saying this whole time, just keep safety in mind when you're doing this. Obviously, if you're going to be storing your mechanicals, or when you're storing anything, in any mods, any batteries, anything in general, store it in a safe place. These things are electronic devices. If it gets dropped, there's a chance that you could damage it electronically, and it could have a fault. It could short out and cause an issue. So be careful with your devices. Remember that they're electronic devices. Be careful. Treat them like you would an iPad or something fancy. Something nice that has sensitive electronics. Be gentle with it. Don't throw it around like it's your regular, pack of analog cigarettes that you can toss on the bed, that if they get wet, try not to get your, vaping equipment wet. Just be careful with it. It's an electronic device. Electronics do not like water. I can basically keep going on and come up with more and more stuff. Just remember that vaping, it's not safer than smoking, but it's reduced risk, reduced danger, but you can put that danger right in there and make it worse if you're not careful, if you're not safe, and you're doing things that are way above what you should be doing. If you don't have skill with electronics, don't go start building all kind of crazy stuff when you have no idea what you're doing. Find a friend. I know personally I have a few friends that electricians, electrical engineers, so if I have a question about stuff, I can go to these people and get the information I need to know about, electronics and calculating different stuff, as well as you can go online and find different calculators for calculating, voltage and ohms and wattage and everything that you need to know. You can find calculators online for it. Just Google what you're looking for. You'll find stuff in, a couple minutes. Take it. You can get an app on your phone for being able to calculate, Ohm's law and stuff. Have that so you can calculate how many amps your coils will be pulling, and whenever you build the coil, check the ohms on it, and then go plug it in your ohms calculator with the other information, and it'll tell you how many amps that coil is going to be drawing. Know what amp limit your battery is. If you need to, write it on big on the side of it with a Sharpie or something, and that way you can keep track of, write down when you build a coil head. Save a memo in your phone. Write it down on a piece of paper. Write it down. Keep a notebook. That's probably one thing that when you get into rebuildables, be something to do. Write down. Keep little notes of the coils that you build. See what works. Document the vapor production. If you have the ability to, record it on your phone. Record it on a webcam. Record it on something. Record. What kind of vape you get. If you end up blowing these big old huge clouds, keep in mind you're going to want to reduce your nicotine on that. But if you end up doing that, be safe, be careful. Blowing the big clouds isn't cool when you have a battery, mess up and basically do what it does when it messes up. Basically, it's one of those things, if you respect it and you understand it and you don't go do anything, you realize that what you're dealing with, there is inherent risk in it, you'll be okay. But when you start getting goofy with things and trying to push things beyond what they can, that's when things start happening that aren't good. And like I said before, all they do when things have problems, it gives the anti whatever it is more ammunition to use against us. So, all of us like doing this. It's keeping us off the cigarettes, but if we go and we start, doing all kind of crazy stuff and we're blowing fingers and faces off because batteries blow up, which, batteries can mess up in your TV remote. They can mess up in your flashlight. They can, batteries mess up. Batteries have problems. Batteries leak. When you're a kid and you had a toy and you open up and there's all kind of craziness in the battery compartment. That battery did something it wasn't supposed to. So, like always, when you go to a shop, don't always, if the guy tells you something, I've already ran into this issue before. They'll tell you what battery voltage something is, or what amp limit the battery is. You calculate out and you look up online, you find out that the amp limit's half of what you were told it was. Now, I'm still, even with it being half of what I was thought it was, or what I was told it was initially, it still works for my application. But still, if I'd have just went home thinking that I had the limit that I was told, I'd have had some problems if I'd have tried to push it to that limit, because I would have been over, taxing that battery. So do your homework, research things out, research from multiple sources. Don't just, if you're on one website, check 2 websites, check 3. Talk to somebody in the shop, find out everything. Call the manufacturer of batteries, figure out what amp limit things have. Look up tech specs on it. Be safe with this stuff. So that's pretty much it. Like I said in the beginning, be careful when you're buying your stuff. Make sure you know what you're buying. Make sure you buy from reputable companies. I have cloned devices, but to be honest, with batteries, I want the original. I want to know that I'm getting I want to know that the name that's on that battery is the name of who made that battery. And if it's not, I want to know that this company says that we use brand whoever batteries inside of our cells. So I know, that even though it says, Bill's batteries, it's, Greg's cells, cells inside that battery. So, that's me. Well, hope you learned something. If you haven't learned anything, hopefully I reminded you. Be safe. And hey, if vaping has kept you off the cigarettes, congratulations to you. Give yourself a pat on the back. You have a pat on the back from me. A high five, handshake, thumbs up, whatever. If you made 2014 your year to quit, like a bunch of my friends did, let's give all of us a round of applause and stuff. I have some friends that, told me that they went ahead and quit, and they got off the analog cigarettes. So, obviously this vaping's working to get people switching. So, let's be safe with it out there, because we don't need to have the statistics that the big tobacco companies have. Let's keep our statistics down. Because hey, we all know that this has gotten us off the cigarettes and stuff. So, congratulations everybody that quit, and everybody that's working on quitting. Keep on going with it. So thank you for listening.